Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Sitting Down with Scholars. I'm joined this week by Molly. And Molly, can you start off by telling me about your academic career so far?
Like John said, hi, I'm Molly. Um, my academic career, well, I got into like I guess academia when I was in college. That's where it all started. I did a year at sixth form actually, and I was doing something completely different. I was studying mainly dance and a bit of psychology. Decided the dancing route really wasn't for me, and went back to something that I've always been passionate about, which is just conservation, the environment, and animals. And that's when I went to college and did animal management and really enjoyed it, but also just really liked the practical elements. So thought that maybe I would do an internship. Then on the last day of the UCAS deadline, I decided maybe I should apply for uni. I think I would like it. I've really enjoyed writing my specialist project, which was like a mini dissertation, I guess, where we had to do like a mini literature review and stuff, and lots more report writing. And I actually discovered then that I quite enjoyed that side of things. So maybe uni would be good for me. So I applied for some unis and then decided to go ahead with it. And then went and studied at Nottingham University. That's when I did zoo biology for my bachelor's. I really enjoyed it, but I was very unfortunate that COVID hit in my first year. So unfortunately, that meant half my first year and all of my second year were online. So I went home in first year and studied from home, but I spent my second year living on campus. And then third year, luckily, everything opened up again. I was able to go and live in the city, have like a normal-ish uni life. But decided once I graduated with the grades I wanted. I was really happy. Also sad to be leaving university because I felt like my experience was slightly robbed from me. But I didn't want to jump straight into a master's because although I love academia, I wanted to find a program that was right for me. And I felt that I wasn't sure what that was yet. So, and I'm still not sure. I haven't actually gone back to do my master's yet, but hopefully one day I will, or a PhD. So that's my academic journey so far.
And like you say, I think with the whole disruption for your educational experience, particularly the first and second year, I'm thinking for most people, if it's in your final year when it's not the social element that you have for the university experience, it must be to a degree more. I can only think from the lecturer's point of view that it's seeing students how disruptive it was for their first and second years when I was teaching college students. It must be very have had an impact on your social environment, not only from a living situation, but obviously a lot of people say about the networking is such a crucial part of your university experience, and those first and second years are where you would have traditionally either got closer with your friends, but also potentially built your academic network.
Yeah, it was really difficult, and I felt it really hard to build a relationship with any of my lecturers because it was just like this is now on Zoom, but you can imagine like a Zoom meeting with 60 odd people, everyone's on mute, half the people don't have cameras on, so you don't really build a relationship with any of your lecturers. That came to third year and it was back to in-person lectures, and no one knew who anyone was. It was a really strange experience. So yeah, that is very unfortunate. And although I love the university itself, unfortunately, COVID did make it a bit of a difficult experience in some ways. But in others, it was okay because like having stuff online made it a bit more accessible. But then it was difficult when you had queries and stuff. You couldn't just go and speak to a lecturer after the lecture. You had to send an email, and then if they didn't reply, then it's like, what do? You can't do anything else.
I suppose that though raises a point. I know you said about pursuing a master's or a PhD at one point. Would you ever pursue one online?
Yeah, I would, especially now because I'm on the other side of the world. That yeah, if that was something that I could do from here, that would be amazing because I'm not sure if and when I will return to the UK. So not that I have to go to the UK to do a master's, but
Hmm.
doing stuff like this overseas can get quite expensive depending on what kind of funding is available.
Mm. Yeah, because I suppose just thinking about your situation and thinking about it from the perspective of other students who might be in the same boat, the master, you're still obviously eligible for master's loans and that type of things, and there's a reason why online study, even as a home student, even if you're not based in the UK, it shouldn't still be a funded point. So for those who are
Yeah, it's an
potentially in a
interesting
similar
point.
situation, but
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and not something I've really considered. So it's definitely something I would look into, and especially, um, yeah, maybe I find something that I'm passionate about enough to want to do a project like that on, and it make it even more worthwhile for all the field work as well.
I think the other thing, just going from obviously, for context for those who are listening, uh, when you were doing your specialist project, doing various elements of your college course, that was I was teacher there at the time and course managing. But one of the things that might be interesting to know, and I'm not sure whether I'm just curious whether you think this is a better way of going about it. The Now that the curriculum is changing more to a T level, they've gone away with the specialist project and have gone more towards a actual research project. Or that's what they're bringing in. I know from working with the exam board. But whether you think making it specifically research rather than a specialist project would be
Well,
better or worse.
I think it's probably better, to be honest. I think it better sets you up for like future academia. I really believe that going to college gave me a really good head start in university, and I thought it was going to be the other way around. I was really worried going to university and starting first year that because I didn't go to sixth form and do A levels, that I'd be behind everyone else and I'd be lacking in knowledge. But it was actually the other way around because of what I did,
Mm.
streamlined so well into my course. And all like A levels are 100% exam based now. So a lot of people don't know how to reference, don't know how to report, right? So I think by making it more of a research project, it really sets you up well for further education. And if you don't want to go to further education, that's cool. But it would be a good experience to do a proper research project, and you never know, you might find a new passion through that as well. I remember when I did my specialist project, I think more people, yeah, like kind of took more of a research approach anyway. So I think it makes sense to do it that way, and um, yeah, it gets the cogs whirring, and gives you an opportunity to do things as you would higher up.
Yeah, because I think from memory, was your specialist project on? I know it was on conservation. I believe it was leopards of some description from.
It was. I can't remember exactly what the title was, but it was uh, yeah, something to do with the Amur leopard and conservation efforts.
Yeah, I suppose from the point of view of making it more research based rather than for those who haven't done any college courses that are the equivalent, the context was you were more graded off how your project was structured rather than the project itself. I think is the weakness of what specialist project was versus, like you say, a research project. You're graded on what you're actually saying rather than have you used the Gantt chart or have you used that type of
Mm,
thing, which I don't
yeah.
think necessarily. Equally, as someone who doesn't plan, from my point
And
of view,
plans don't always go to plans. So plans don't always go to plans. So
yeah, exactly. One other thing, Molly, I want to know is what really drove you down this path? And obviously, now you're working in the marine world, so you moved from zoo biology more specifically to marine ecosystems and teaching other people to learn how to dive as well. So, what drove you this way?
So I actually did research expedition with Operation Wallacea. I was meant to do it between my second and third year as like a summer placement, but COVID ruined that one for me. But I decided it was something I still really wanted to do because it sounded like a really cool opportunity. So I still went. I went after I finished my third year. I went to Mexico. And rather than just signing up for the full terrestrial experience, I thought it would be a good opportunity to try the marine stuff. I've never really been that interested in marine ecology as such, but I just love conservation. and wanted to see what that was about as well. So I did 2 weeks in the jungle where we did loads of research techniques and surveys on like bats, mammals, reptiles, butterflies. It was really, really good. Really cool to camp in hammocks and tents and have bonfires. And then we went to the marine site for 2 weeks, and that's where I got my first scuba diving license and also learned underwater research techniques. I kind of fell in love with it. It was something that I never thought I'd be passionate about, but I was like, wow, this is so cool. Um, so then when I was traveling like a year later, I decided to further my scuba training and do my advanced license. And then I thought, oh yeah, this is really cool. I want to find a way maybe that I can incorporate something that I love, like the scuba, into my work. And that's when like marine biology came into the picture. But a lot of positions require you to have dive master training. So I worked hard at home, saved up a lot of money, and then at the beginning of this year flew out to Indonesia to do my dive master training with the Indo-Ocean Project. And they're a conservation organization that train up professional divers, but give them scientific training as well. So I spent 10 weeks here with them. So I'm back here now, but I spent 10 weeks with them learning lots of different survey techniques. We were doing roving diver surveys. We were setting up cameras underwater to monitor the underwater marine life and doing lots of data collection, hunting mangroves, doing coral restoration, as well as doing all the dive training as well to become a dive master. And then I was lucky enough to volunteer with Operation Wallacea as a dive master as well over summer. And that's where I started teaching reef ecology to high school children, university students. And yeah, just it kind of took off from there. I haven't really had a paid position yet as a marine bio position, but right now I'm working as a dive instructor in Indonesia. I was previously working in Australia on one of the liveaboards as a dive instructor. But even though it's not directly related to marine conservation biology, still working in this field, you can teach people a lot and influence their views and educate them still. So, and I'm hoping, so I'm now back in Indonesia where I did my dive masters, and I'm working with the dive center partnered with the Indo-Ocean Project. So that way I'm hoping to still be more in touch with the conservation and research that they do, and hoping to get the dive center more on board with that, which is really exciting concept.
Yeah, sounds really interesting, and particularly I know a lot of students tend to have their first introduction to Operation Wallacea through college programs, through trips, like you say, which you probably taught students on those types of programs. But equally, I know you did it independently. Is that right? Rather than as a
I
group.
did it, yeah, it was more independently. So I heard about it through the university, but I booked onto it independently. I didn't know anyone else that was going, but I wasn't the only one. There's lots of university students that go independently, but there's also groups of like college students that go as well. So if you if like you're listening to this and it's something you're interested in, you wouldn't be the only one going alone. If your school or university or education organization isn't organizing a trip, it's still something that you can do, and you won't be the only one.
It's all over different places as well, because I know from when they've reached out from a lecturing point of view for asking for lecturers to promote or share it.
Hmm.
I know there's ones in Europe, there's Asia.
Yes, it's not all like so exotic and fast bred. So I was actually volunteering first in their site at Croatia, on the terrestrial site. So I spent 2 months there as a mammal researcher, setting up the camera traps and helping set up the long-term monitoring program for them there, which is really cool. So they got sites there, but then they also have sites in Indonesia where I was, which is so beautiful. It's amazing. They have the forest site and the marine site. And then they have Honduras and Mexico and South Africa. So I would love to volunteer with them again. So we will see if that happens, and if I can make it work and with my schedule and my lifestyle now, then I definitely will be back with them, whether that's Indonesia or somewhere else across the world. I don't know yet, but
So one of the other things I want to know a bit about is, and having also seen your what was your UCAS application years ago now, is who inspired you to be who you are today?
So as like a kid growing up, I think that your parents have a big influence on you. But my parents aren't very outdoorsy people, but I always used to love watching documentaries on the TV. Probably someone like Steve Batchel doing Deadly 60. I also used to watch that program and think, oh, he's so cool. Um, and I guess like shows like that really made me care about the environment. So I guess like people like that, Steve Irwin, David Attenborough, the classics, are people that have inspired me to go down this conservation route. But someone in my life now who currently inspires me is definitely my sister. As cliche as that sounds, like she is my best friend, and we don't get to see each other anymore, but we stay in contact a lot, and she's someone that inspires me a lot through the just through everything that she does.
Is your sister also in and one either the animal world or in what's your sister's academic experience from what you
She did go to university, but she's a dancer. So she's a choreographer and she works for a dance charity currently called Dance East. And she's their program coordinator. But she did a bit of lecturing at the University of Lincoln for a bit after she graduated. So she did her master's there with them. And then she worked as a dance lecturer there for a little bit as well. And then she come back home, back to Suffolk, where we're from, and now is working for the charity Dance East.
Okay. And thinking, you've told me a bit about this with what your plan is for your future career and ideally, but what specifically I want to know about is what do you really hope to achieve in your the very early point of your academic career? What's the long term vision of what you hope?
Well, I like ideally I would love to go back to academia, but if that doesn't happen, I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm very relaxed and see like where the wind takes me type of thing. But just my career in general, I just want to help others and inspire others and help educate people as well. So maybe if I find the right master's or PhD, I can also help facilitate that through that. I would love to do a PhD one day, but it's a very big commitment. And it would have to be for the right reasons and for the right cause. So I don't know, maybe where I'm working now is there's not a marine protected area here, but they're working really hard with the government to try and create one. So if maybe doing like a thesis, like a master's project here or something would help that, then maybe
Mm.
that's my calling. Maybe that's um that's the route I take. So yeah, and then make it remote, I guess, because I can't give up my life here just yet. I quite enjoy my island life at the minute. So unfortunately, with academia, it's very strict with deadlines and stuff. Yeah, I would have to if I wanted to do something, I would want to make sure that I'm doing it right and doing it properly and for the right reasons. So it's definitely on the cards. I'm just not sure when that fits with my timeline. But I mean, like, there's no rush, you know?
Exactly, and I think, like you say, I think especially if you decided to do something part time distance learning, I can say
Hmm.
from my own experience when I was teaching people like yourself side doing my masters. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what my master at the time. I wanted a bit more business experience, which was not for everyone, but it was something that was definitely worthwhile for my career stage. But it splits the 1 year program over 3 years, and you get there eventually.
Yeah.
It feels like it's to an extent never ending for a while because it does feel like it's dragged out. But then when you get busy like you are with life, you realize, well, I need to have this flexibility.
Yeah.
Outside of that, what really, I think some of that alluded from what you were saying there about ocean conservation, marine protected areas. But what really excites you about what you do now that you said you don't want to give it up? So, what excites you about what you do?
So right now, as I mentioned before, I'm working with a dive instructor. And for me, I've always liked to teach. So I started like my first teaching job when I was like 14, um, teaching gymnastics to school kids. And then I have done like little teaching jobs here and there, and didn't really realize how much I like it until I keep finding myself falling back into these kind of roles. So what excites me is like introducing people to the underwater world. Like these people that I'm taking in the water have never been under the surface. Some of them before, some of them have never snorkeled before.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of people obviously have never scuba dived because I teach like a lot of open water courses, or just take people for discovery dives, which is when they have no certification but they want to give it a go. And seeing their face light up, or I think the funniest ones are the people who have like a resting mask face and they're like just like this, so serious with the whole thing. And you bring them up to the surface and they take everything off and like, wow, that was amazing. That was the most beautiful experience. I can't believe how beautiful it is under there. Like, thank you so much. And just seeing how happy and elated people are after showing them the underwater world just makes it worth it. And especially like when people get their certification and they're so grateful um, for it, and seeing how they evolve as a diver throughout the training. I don't know, it gives me like a sense of purpose and like really fulfills me. So yeah, just making others happy, I guess, is the bottom line to that.
Molly, I'm just now going to take us into a bit of a pivot, which is the 10 questions in 10 words or less. So these are going to be rapid fire questions. So who is a character or individual that you admire?
Someone I admire, obviously David Attenborough. He's a living legend, and it'll be sad when he goes.
It was interesting you said earlier as well about the marine protected areas. I know his recent thing on Disney Plus was highlighting how limited that is. So that's another bit of context. I think the deep sea trawling, for example, being particularly
Yes,
impactful.
there's a lot that goes on out here that people don't realise about, and a lot of damage to our oceans that still goes on. A lot of people talk about deforestation, but the coral reefs actually generate more oxygen than the Amazon. So they need saving too.
Exactly. So what is a life lesson that stuck with you?
A life lesson that I stick by is when there's a will, there's a way. And this year has definitely it's been my motto for the year, for sure.
And what was a subject that you had dismissed in school that you wish you did more or used more?
I wouldn't say I just missed this subject, but I wish I used more maths. I still use maths, but not in the way that we used it in school. And I do like it to get the brain working a little bit. So maybe I need to do some more puzzles and brainstorming. Sorry, that wasn't 10 words.
They're more like a functional skill, but not. I will caveat this: more like a functional skill, but not how functional skills are assessed. Because in my view, they're still not assessed really to give the student the best experience. But that's a teacher's perspective on that one. What is the most recent book that you've read?
Bit boring one, but over the summer I basically read a fish ID book because I needed to use it for my work.
And if you had a theme song, what would it be?
Cheesy but unwritten, as I never really know what I'm doing, but I go with the flow.
The favorite thing about your academic journey?
My final year of uni and finally getting to experience what being a university student is actually supposed to be like.
I can imagine, I think, where this is going to go, but what was the worst thing about your academic experience?
COVID. It ruined it all. Not all of it. It didn't ruin it all, but it did put a massive damper on because it not only affected like the academic side, but also just from a personal side as well.
I thought that might be the right case, but yeah. How would you like to be seen by other people?
I would say I would like to be seen as knowledgeable, kind, passionate, uh, and like a strong person as well. Like for strong, confident. Yeah, I feel like those are good traits.
If you had a do-over with your career, starting completely over again, what would you do instead?
I would still go down. I would still do science, but rather at university, choosing like zoo biology. I think I would have gone just to biology to give me a broader skill set to then narrow it down later on. I don't want a do-over.
No,
But
fair
I
enough.
would, if I had to go back and have a do-over, I would definitely choose just a biology degree or something a bit broader than do biology.
It's interesting, like you say, I've a specialist degree, very similar to yourself when I did animal behavior. One thing I have taken from my experience and have taught back to other students now is if you're doing your bachelor's degree and you aren't 100% sure what you want to do, or even if you are, sometimes the more general degree is the safer
Yeah, for sure.
bet. And then, like you say, you can always specialize in your masters, and a PhD is very specialized.
Yeah, exactly.
The last question that I have is, if you were giving advice to a student starting out, what would it be?
Work hard and make it happen. Like, yeah, I think, yeah, opportunities that are meant for you don't always go past you, but you also can't just sit idle in life going by that mantra. You have to go for it.
Because, like you say, and I know you've this shared before, but like to basically fund your travel, the travel and the experiences that you had, you worked as a security at
Yeah.
Stansted Airport.
Yeah, I worked in airport security, which obviously is a very conservation like orientated. I worked there for almost a year and a half. Obviously it wasn't what I wanted to do, it wasn't my dream job, but it got me to where I am now. So unfortunately sometimes you have to do the undesirable jobs to get to the desirable ones.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, I think the important thing is to keep that picture of where you want to go and keep it working.
Yeah, for sure. Don't let yourself get stuck somewhere that you intended to only be temporary just because it pays well, because you're not going to be happy, and like you want to live your life to the full and it to be fulfilling. And yeah, just remember your dreams. Don't let yourself down.
How do you think you've been shaped by either your personal or your academic heritage?
So I think coming from a working class family and a working class background, I've always understood that I need to put in the work and work hard to get where I want to be, because things weren't just going to be given to me. And if I wanted to, I don't know, go on the expedition with Operation Wallacea, like my dad would say, money doesn't grow on trees. But if I want it, then I've got to make it happen. I've got to find a way to fund it, I guess. And it's like all this stuff that I've done has by no means been cheap. But I've worked hard to get here. I've worked at the jobs that I don't want to worked multiple jobs at once just to help me save to get to these places. So I guess like growing up and seeing how hard that my parents work has given me that really good work ethic that I have as well. So that's definitely shaped me as the person who I am today. And it still carries through. Like I always want to do the job to my best of my ability, no matter what it is.
That's where the mantra, where there's a will, there's a way, like you say,
Oh yeah, for sure.
is got to be there, because I think so many people stop doing what they're doing through persistence, and even when it's tough, there is to a degree some way that you can get over that obstacle, even if it seems like it's insurmountable. There are some supports. I mean, there could always be better. I would certainly say through work I've done with outreach and diversity work, there's always more that can be done, and hopefully there still is. But I think till those doors are open, you've got to just keep plowing through. And if
Keep
you're the person
knocking.
who
Yeah. I keep wanting it. You've got to keep fighting for what you want, for sure. Like it's not always going to be easy, but it doesn't mean that you stop.
academic post, wherever in the world that may take you, you are given a rare magic money tree.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, how would you spend your on outreach, education, and research? And you can do it as a percent, and do it more as a percentage rather than a monetary.
They all hold so much value. Like to me, education is the most important thing. If we don't educate people, how are they meant to know about everything that we're finding out? But also, like you'd be amazed out here in Indonesia how little people know about what's on their doorstep. So until people are educated, then why would they care? So I think the most amount for me would probably go into education. But then that like ties in with the outreach as well. Like, so it's so difficult because obviously the research is really important, but I feel like not a lot enough people know about what we've already done, let alone about what we want to do. So maybe a bit controversial, but I would potentially put the least into education, like maybe have research, sorry, maybe have 25% as research. Um, and I don't know, that makes the other two really high though. Yeah, and like 30% outreach and 45 teaching, or the other way around, I'm not sure. I don't know, does that make 100?
I think one of the things that's interesting, like you say, though, the outreach perspective and how you communicate the various research that we all do. I think one of the things that is often overstated in terms of when people try to do it and underutilized is citizen science, where, for argument's sake, let's say someone who's in the position that you are now, and Operation Wallacea is pretty much exactly a case study of which. Then, if you do something like that, your research is outreach because you're communicating it anyway. But I think one of the weaknesses with traditional research, especially, and I can say this from doing the PhD, is the loop doesn't seem to include the people that you've worked with. I mean, I try and do a lot with research and outreach because of that's what I'm interested in. But
Yeah.
a lot of people miss that. I would say, oh, I've done a project and then forgot to inform the people who've helped you.
But I don't know. I think the problem, so yeah, like you say, Operation Wallacea, and even here, everything is reliant on citizen science. But the citizen science is executed by people that have come and paid to do these expeditions. It doesn't include the local community. So that's where I think the outreach needs to be broadened to, that we could maybe incorporate the local communities because they're the ones that are here, and then they can pass on this information to future generations, and they'll pass it on to their children. And then it actually cements here as part of the culture rather than just having people that have paid to come here, do the bit of science and leave. And then it doesn't really, it kind of then just diffuses out, and it only just stays in this small net community. Whereas if you're passing on that outreach to the people that actually live here, then I think it's just, I don't know, has more of an impact. I think Operation Wallacea, their Indonesia site do this quite well because they employ a lot of the local community, and they have a good mix of local staff, foreign staff come in, which is really nice. So but I feel like there's always more that we can do.
I think the other thing that I've really taken from different points, and I suppose this is where whilst I phrase that question like they're all separate, they are really all together because one, you have what I would class as, especially historically, academia has done this. You go into a place, you go to, whether it be, particularly if it was the global south countries, where they're perceived as being less academic or less traditional in terms of the scientific method that they use. So therefore, it's going in and saying, okay, I'm from whatever university and I'm going to do the research, and this is a way that it should be done. When the locals have a different way of collecting the same information or having new, different techniques, which are particularly in the animal sciences, particularly relevant, and even in the conservation, because if you're studying, let's say, fishing habits, it's far more relevant to understand both the local fishermen as well as the impact. And that again, I think, is where you have interdisciplinary work. I think is more interesting because you also start talking to the people rather than just going, okay, I'm going to study, let's say, butterflies. You need to also study farming. You need to study the people who are working in logging or timber or whatever, because otherwise you have a massive gap in your knowledge, or at least that's my experience from my research time.
I think it's really important to open up that conversation, and I like how you said talking to the people. I feel like a lot of times people are talking at the people, And yeah, it's really important that it's a conversation, because if you're just coming into an area and barking orders and trying to change people's lifestyles and ways of living that they've had culturally embedded in them, it's not going to go down well unless you give them a viable alternative. Then that's why we need their education as well to like back up things, and then that would help establish MPAs in places like this and better conservation efforts. It's always so important to educate, and that outreach is in place to get everyone on board and to keep everyone happy as well, because these people still need to survive that are in these remote areas, like yeah, like the fishermen and stuff. It's their way of living, it's their way of life.
And I think the other thing, this is a very niche thing from within academia, but it's important, is when it comes to whatever work you eventually publish, making sure that the locals, they might not be want the academic publication, but either at the very least they're acknowledged, or ideally they should be on a co-publisher, depending on the level of impact, because otherwise it's so easy to think, okay, university researcher has gone in, collected research, gets publication, does a lot with that publication. I think it's bad academic practice, in my view, not to credit. I'm not saying it used to go on a lot worse than it is now, but there will still be cases, I'm sure. And you'd have to go down each individual paper to work out who's done it well or who's done it badly. But yeah, that's a observation of the academic world that isn't great, but it's getting better. More the last few questions, and first of all, one question for you from a previous guest, Molly, was if you could work with any company, organization, or brand, or even individual, I suppose at this point, who would it be?
You know what? I think it would actually be really cool to work with SSI themselves. So that's Scuba Schools International. That's the company I'm affiliated with through my instructor training. And I think it would be really cool to work with them and help further their conservation message. But also, as a female scuba instructor, we're a little bit underrepresented in the scuba world. So for me, I think that would be quite cool. And yeah, I'm looking at maybe trying to do more on socials to help with like conservation messaging and stuff. So I'm not sure how that's going to look yet, but yeah, maybe we can make that happen sometime in the future. You never know.
Before I go on to some of the other points, it makes sense to do that. Do this now as you've just led into the social side. If someone, a guest, wants to follow along for your academic or outreach journey, how can they follow along for the journey?
So all my socials are very easy. It's just Molly Byford. You can follow me on LinkedIn, but you can also reach out to me on Instagram if you want as well. Either or, I will pick up the message on either of those two channels. If you decide to contact me, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have anything more related to how I got here, my dive journey, how to get into diving, if you're interested in that kind of thing, or even traveling. I've done a fair bit of traveling around Indonesia and Southeast Asia, so it doesn't even have to be about academics, it can be about anything. I'm not always the most prompt at replying now that I'm back in Indonesia, but I do look at my phone. I try and look at my phone once a day. So I will get back to you at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't really be on your phone when you're underwater.
I mean, you can get really cool like cases for your phone now that they can go underwater, but unfortunately the reception doesn't work down there. But you can play music, which is pretty cool when you're on your safety stop, just chilling, and you've got nothing to look at, so you can play some music.
I suppose with that, that was the question from my last guest to you, Molly. But what question would you ask the next guest who I have on?
What personality traits do you think are important for your current job role?
Sure, it'll take them a little while to come up with that answer, but that's always a good sign. So that is pretty much the end of this episode and all the questions that I have. However, I do have one other. If you were to try to picture what you want a PhD project to cover, What would you like that to look at?
I think ideally something in the marine world, maybe something to do with maybe like the effects, like the positive or negative effects of establishing an MPA on not just the like wildlife, but also the local community. That would be quite interesting, I think. Like how MPAs, um, or like if they work even, like if people stick by the rules, how well they're regulated, something along those lines.
Also
Yeah.
interesting, that's a bit of a dive into policy for you, which is something that is not a
Yeah, I've been a little bit like so when I was at university, I was interested in legislation. I actually quite liked the legislation. I was thinking about maybe going up to Scotland and doing a master's, like more um, down the route of zoo legislation.
mhm,
But I don't know. Like I am a bit of a wild card.
mm.
I am a jack of all trades and master of none. So who knows? I love fish though, so maybe it would have to be something to do with fish as well.
I mean, I will also say this is more because I've listened to that full quote of the jack of all trades, master of none, but it does end with it's better than being a master of one. So there's not always a bad thing being a jack of all trades.
There we go. You dabble in a bit of everything.
But yeah, well, thank you very much, Molly, for joining me on Sitting Down with Scholars, and all the best in your career. And like I said, like Molly said, based on the socials, I will also tag Molly in some of the clips so that you can find her on her academic journey. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.